including us, it looks like.
Yeah. We have 79 inscriptions, and they're gonna connect to the there. Okay, cool. Let's now switch for Portuguese. Sorry. Boa noite, pessoal. Bem-vindos a mais uma noite de aprendizado para a comunidade aqui de arquitetos de Curitiba. Então, para lembrar vocês, o link para o sorteio dos prêmios da Flosum já está fixado em cima no chat. É só ir lá e fazer a inscrição. Caso tenha algum problema, pinga a gente no chat aí que a gente vai tentar resolver isso daí. Opa, meu nome é Maurício, acho que a maioria aqui que está conectada já me conhece. Quem precisar do meu auxílio, ali mauricio.silva@trailblazerscgl.com. Segue a gente lá no canal do YouTube, onde que a gente posta todos os eventos que a gente faz. E também, quer conectar comigo no LinkedIn, tá aqui, tá meu endereço ali. E só contar comigo, e estamos aí. Bom, como eu comentei, os brindes hoje já são, de novo, também gratos a Flosum. Vai sortear também 2 vouchers, né, Gustavo?
Isso mesmo, 2 vouchers do iFood.
Do iFood. Então o form tá pinado ali no chat. Só lá se inscrever e cruzar os dedos para encher a barriga. O próximo evento nosso vai ser no Dreamforce. A gente vai ter provavelmente mais um evento em setembro, um virtual, mas a gente está tentando fazer o primeiro encontro de brasileiros dentro do Dreamforce. Então, quem for lá, por favor, tem o evento aí para se inscrever para poder participar lá. Vai ter bastante coisa a gente vai estar fazendo aí. A gente está tentando encontrar uns parceiros aí para fazer alguma coisa. Mas pinga lá e se conecta. Bom, partindo agora, a gente vai deixar na mão aí do Gustavo, que eles vão fazer a apresentação, demo, QA e daí o sorteio. Gustavo?
Assim como a gente fez nas outras apresentações, eu vou compartilhar aqui minha tela, fazer um slidezinho rápido ali e a gente passa para a apresentação. Então, vou compartilhar aqui, deixa eu clicar aqui para compartilhar. Share screen. Window, ok. Bom, pessoal, vamos lá. Pessoal, se tiver alguma dúvida, por favor, coloquem no chat. Eu estou olhando aqui, mas também se eu não ver, Maurício, tu me chama aí, certo? O pessoal falando de Dreamforce, aproveitando, a gente vai estar com 2 stands lá no Dreamforce também. Quem tiver presente na passada lá para conversar, o Joe vai estar lá também. A gente está conectando clientes, aí também quem tem interesse em conhecer mais a Flosum, a gente vai fazer umas apresentações, acho que vai ter um café, uns brindes, algumas coisas lá no nosso stand. A apresentaçãozinha rápida aqui, acho que está até cortando os nomes embaixo, não sei, mas Gustavo, tá cortando os nomes, né? Tá legal?
Tá legal.
Legal. Eu trabalho com tudo relacionado a Latam, aqui na parte de comercial, de suporte. O Andrew, que é o VP de algumas regiões de sales, inclusive América Latina. O Bruno, que ele não veio hoje, mas ele participou dos outros eventos, ele é o nosso CSM para quem é Brasil. Então, atendimento a cliente a gente faz com o Bruno, em português, fuso horário Brasil. Acho que a gente é uma das únicas empresas que tem esse foco aí bem grande aí no Brasil. E hoje a gente tem o Joe aqui para fazer a apresentação do Trust Center. Ele é o nosso o diretor da parte de pré-vendas, certo? Então, quem já conheceu, a gente teve o Jason na primeira oportunidade, o Jason e o Charlie na segunda, e hoje vamos com o Joe aqui. Normalmente, Flosum é parceira do Salesforce desde 2014, 3 soluções na App Exchange. DevOps, a gente conversou há 15 dias atrás, toda a parte de gerenciamento de metadados. Semana passada a gente falou de toda a parte de gerenciamento de dados, né, que incluiu a Data Migration e Data Backup e Recovery. E hoje a gente vai falar de Trust Center, né? O Trust Center, ele é uma camada extra de segurança, né? Então a gente diz que você começa com DevOps, você coloca um dados e depois você faz um DevSecOps, né? Então você coloca uma segurança em cima da parte de DevOps. Então hoje o que a gente quer colocar é como se fosse a cereja do bolo em cima do DevOps, né? Quando você quer chegar ali no estado da arte de DevOps, você coloca o Sec em cima, vai virar o DevSecOps. Sobre a Flosum, pessoal, a gente tem um portal, success.flosum.com. Lá vocês têm acesso a muita informação, como fazer, melhores práticas, as certificações, que são gratuitas. Então, você pode cadastrar para fazer as 2 certificações que estão disponíveis. E quando você vira cliente, tem a parte de cases, tem umas outras oportunidades que vão, outros itens que vão aparecer para clientes, certo? Mas quem não é cliente só tem que se logar lá, se registrar com o e-mail institucional e tem acesso a quase tudo do portal. Pessoal, um pouco do nosso histórico aqui na América Latina. Nossos clientes, que estão em rosa aqui, são times ou empresas que estão na América Latina. Então, todo mundo que está aqui, a grande parte desses em rosa, acredito que todos. A parte de CS é pelo Bruno, então o gerenciamento de conta é comigo. Então, a gente tem todo essa gama de clientes, certo? De empresas pequenas, assim, com times, na verdade, pequenos, né, de 5, 7 usuários, a 100, 200, 300 usuários, tanto no Brasil quanto fora. Vamos lá, pessoal, Trust Center, certo? Então, a finalidade do Trust Center é aumentar a segurança da sua org, certo? É identificar, monitorar e corrigir erros, falhas ou ameaças que está tendo ali na org. Então, pessoal, ele é uma solução nativa, pode funcionar sem o DevOps, mas eu recomendo que tenha o DevOps porque ele consegue colocar mais, você consegue abranger mais funcionalidades dele, certo? Então, eu vou passar aqui para a próxima página. O que é o objetivo, né, do Trust Center, né? Só segurança é muito amplo para falar, mas o que é? Você vai colocar uma série de regras de segurança na sua org, no seu ambiente, e a gente vai monitorar aquelas regras de segurança e vamos lá avisar se tiver alguma quebra numa dessas regras. E se tiver uma quebra, o que é que você quer fazer? O exemplo que eu gosto de usar muito, pessoal, assim, o Joe vai falar de muitos exemplos, mas o que eu acho legal aqui, que é fácil de a gente entender, por exemplo, não pode ter um novo perfil Modifier Data. Se não pode, uma condição só pode ter 5 pessoas, já tem essas 5. Se um deve colocar tá criando ali uma branch, colocar um Modifier Data na branch, você já recebe um alerta. Quem está aqui é o administrador, os administradores do Trust Center já recebem um alerta. Deve Gustavo colocou um Modifier Data na branch. O que é que você quer fazer? Vai liberar esse deploy ou não? Vai parar ele já aqui? Nem deixa ele nem paquear para canto nenhum. Isso porque tem aquele estudo que o pessoal faz que quanto mais para a esquerda você detectar e resolver um erro, uma falha, acho que é 10 vezes mais barato, né? A cada passo que você vai andando no seu pipeline, fica 10 vezes mais caro corrigir aquele erro. Então a ideia de pegar isso lá no comecinho, lá na etapa de desenvolvimento, e já ir corrigindo ali. À medida que você vai passando isso para frente, vai ficando mais caro você corrigir, né? Até chegar em produção. Pessoal, aqui um pouco da interface da solução. Então, forçamento de políticas de segurança, monitoração e detecção. Aí você tomar ações, né, você encontrou um erro, você toma ação daqui. E a parte de compliance também. Então, muita empresa voltada em governança, ou eu preciso gerar relatórios diários, semanais, quinzenais. Você consegue gerar uma série de relatórios de auditorias de governança com o Trust Center. Pessoal, antes de eu passar para o Joe, lembrar do link que deve estar aí no chat para vocês se registrarem para o gift card, que a gente vai fazer o sorteio mais tarde. E eu vou passar a palavra para o Joe. Joe, sorry for the Portuguese, my friend, and back to you.
That's okay. Thank you. So my Portuguese is very bad. So I think I'm going to stick to English today. Hopefully that works for the majority of the audience. But if you need something translated or you want us to clarify, please use the chat and we can spend some time talking about Trust Center today. Um, I've got a few things ready for you, but remember, this is part of a larger set of offerings, like Gustavo mentioned. We're known for DevOps for Salesforce, and I think last week you spent some time with Jason from my team, who took you through that. And I believe you've done backup and recovery too, right, Gustavo?
Y- Correct. Last week we did all data management, with including migration and data backup.
Okay. And so all that's left is Trust Center today, and I'm taking over for Jason today because he's got a doctor's appointment. Uh, Good to meet all of you. My name is Joe. I lead our solution engineering team here at Flosum, and I've been doing that just over a year. Before that, I spent about 13 years at Salesforce doing a variety of roles, and so I've been around the ecosystem a little bit. And what really motivated me to come to Flowsum is the flexibility and the focus just core on the Salesforce platform. And that's what gets me excited and why I'm very happy to talk to our family in our Ohana in Brazil today. So what I thought I would do is take you through a little bit about how Trust Center is built, and then we'll spend some time in the tool today. So let's start with Trust Center architecture and how it's built. And so a couple of weeks ago, you saw our DevOps tool, which is built on Salesforce to monitor Salesforce. And Flosum Trust Center is an add on to DevOps, and it takes care of things like security scans and audits, data masking, and automated remediation, like Gustavo mentioned. But architecturally, it's going to sit in a Salesforce org. So you'll have an org that's dedicated to DevOps for Salesforce. And in that org will be both DevOps and Trust Center. It connects to one or more production orgs and sandboxes and starts monitoring and helping move the changes coming through that pipeline. And then ultimately, it sits in the middle of your DevOps ecosystem. But Trust Center's job is to monitor the work that you're doing in your sandboxes and in production, get ahead of any potential security risks that you have, as well as take care of some other privacy concerns around data masking in sandbox and such. We're going to look at those in turn today. Now, what I figured I would take you through is a quick demo of how where Flowsum Trust Center sits. We'll talk about some of the org security scans and what's happening there. We'll look at how you define templates to decide what is the security risk and what isn't. And then we can look at other features in Trust Center as well. But as always, if you have questions or you want to explore something that you're not seeing on screen, please use the chat, and Gustavo and Mauricio are monitoring the chat window, and we'll kind of go from there. So I'll pause there. Let me take it out of presentation mode and get over here. Gustavo, could you just confirm that we're seeing the Salesforce org here?
Yes, we can see it.
All right. And so this will start to look familiar based on what Jason took you through 2 weeks ago. This is Flowsum DevOps sitting in a governance org. And we have our deployment pipelines and other things set up here where we're connected to sandboxes. I think Jason may have taken you through, the branching strategy that we have with Flowsum. And this is a Flowsum branch in DevOps. And here's where we start to get our first glimpse of how Trust Center comes into this. And so in our branch, we have some components, including security settings and other pieces. And Trust Center is already flagging that. It's inspecting the metadata on our branch. It sees that we're deploying security settings. It's evaluated that against the rules that we've set up. And now it's flagging those low risk and high risk items within Trust Center on the branch. So as you do your DevOps work, it will tell you exactly what's going to be low risk and high risk so that your developers can get ahead of it here. So you just know that it's part of DevOps here. But let's actually go and take a look at it from a higher level. So we're in the DevOps app here, but Trust Center is just another app sitting in the same org, using the same connections that DevOps uses, and taking care and monitoring of what DevOps is doing, as well as in the orgs itself. And so we have several orgs connected to DevOps and Trust Center here. We're monitoring each and every one of those orgs, and these might be multiple production orgs. They might be sandboxes leading up to a production org. Everything that you saw in connecting orgs that Jason took you through 2 weeks ago is going to be relevant here. Now, we're monitoring this EduTech org because it's our main production org. And so if I click into that org, what we're seeing here is a high level summary dashboard of all of the security aspects of this org coming through based on our scans. And we're scanning the production org and all of the sandbox environments leading up to that production org. And this is a very high level view of things, right? We're looking at specific permissions that we're worried about. How many users have things like API enabled? How many tracked fields are we using within Salesforce? There might be sensitive data in those tracked fields. Where are users and what profiles are they under? But we can get very, very detailed here. We're scheduling a scan to happen every night. And as those scans happen, they're going to go against a very detailed set of templates or rules against those orgs. And if we click into the more detailed view here, this is sort of a quick glimpse of the monitoring tab. It's going to have a visualization of all of the potential policy violations, monitoring, and detection alerts that we've set up on this set of orgs based on their severity and other pieces. Here it's pulling up what can these people do with permissions, how many sharing rules do we have, because we know that can get very expensive in terms of performance, a quick glimpse of where users are logging in from. And so I don't have anybody logging in from Brazil or elsewhere in South America, but we do have people logging in India as well as the Eastern United States. The other thing that Trust Center will do is keep an audit log of changes that we're making. So we're keeping track of permission set changes, profile changes, role changes for users, which might flag something interesting, as well as profile changes in IP addresses. So if you have a user that suddenly is logging in from India and has been logging in from the United States, we can detect that as well. But this analysis goes even deeper. We're monitoring the very configuration of these orgs, not just events that are happening, but configurations in these orgs. So this screen will take you into things like, what are your password policies? How many login attempts do you have? Is that a low risk or a high risk issue? What are your session settings? What are things like user activations and what's your network access? We have a whole bunch of other things in here that we're going to be monitoring for, and we're going to flag these issues like Gustavo mentioned, and we're going to bring them right into DevOps to remediate in just a little bit. But this org security tab gives you the high level of this, the org permissions, the high level remediation pieces, and a bunch of the other things that you have here. And we'll drill down successively on these things. So let's talk a little bit about how we set this up to scan some of these orgs. And you'll notice across the top, we've been working on the org security tab, but it all starts really with connecting orgs and then setting up a security set of templates for each org. So recall how we had the Edutech template there. And we set this template up to tell us what kind of security changes we want to keep track of. So for organizational security in Edutech, we're looking at things like granting login access and allowing administrators to log in as any user. And we're flagging these items as high risk, low risk, or allowing ignore. And that's where Flosum Trust Center will start to monitor these items and will flag them if they are high risk. They'll log them if they're low risk and allow you to take action. And that goes for security settings, things like password policies. And we get into some of the specific settings there, session settings and single sign on settings from a very high level. But you can get even more granular with that. We all know how profiles and permission sets can get very intricate and very detailed within Salesforce development work. And so we also allow you to set up different types of profile security rules and permission set security rules. And so for the Edutech org, we're monitoring for just about everything. What is our custom app access? If we, allow platform access, we're choosing to ignore it here. If we allow sales cloud access, we can flag that as high risk and make it kind of the default thing we're monitoring. The same goes for connected app access, administrative privileges, general user permissions, standard object and custom object permissions. So if I thought that opportunity access is a real problem here, I could change this to high risk and then determine whether I should flag read, create, edit, delete, and others, and then save that back to the security profile. And so the idea here is that you set up your organizational templates, your profile and permission set security templates. You decide what's high risk and low risk for each of your connected orgs, and then you apply those templates to the various orgs. And that's what brings you back to monitoring this org security and will give you the basic idea of where these violations come from here. And so over time, these Scans will happen. You'll get more and more statistics here. And if things are high risk or above, we flag those for you and we can catch them even at the beginning when you're starting to work in a sandbox. So many of you are Salesforce developers. I'm sure you start your work in a developer edition sandbox and not in production like all good developers do. And let's say that if you're working on something, let's say you enabled an overly generous, say, account CRUD or read all data or view all data in one of your sandboxes, and started using our DevOps system to migrate those permissions because they're part of what you need to build. This is something that Trust Center would flag, and it would flag it not only in these charts, but it's going to flag it here in the remediation side of things too. So the remediation tab in Flosum is where you go to do the work and get an idea of what's happening and take action on these things. Here is the edutech org that we've been working on, where we set up the rules for. And it's showing me here how many high risk issues do I have? How many low risk issues do I have? What's outstanding? Who hasn't been assigned, or what hasn't been assigned to somebody to look at and review, and what has been, as well as who's been assigned those items. And so we get the nice little high level view of this here, but we can actually dig down to a deeper level. So if I click into the detail view here, it's giving me a list of all of these items, all of these changes coming through our DevOps pipeline, different environments that have been flagged. And it's categorized them by high risk, low risk, and things that we've muted and just chosen to ignore. So, as not only a DevOps person, but as somebody who is a DevSecOps manager, I can look and inspect each one of these, compare it to policy, assign it to somebody for review, and then that person can come in here and take action on this. And so if I'm looking at this list, I see that somebody has enabled overly generous permissions on the accounts and the account number on certain profiles here. And if I wanted to go and work on these, I could go and assign them off to Snehal to review these. I could also work to select each one of these and go and make some of these changes. So normally, if you're working on a profile, you'd have to get into that source org and go and change the settings on those profile and look at every one of those things and change it to what should be the recommended values over here, right? So this profile is allowing create, edit, and delete and modify all on accounts. And this one is doing edit and read on account number. But if I do some work here and I don't want to get into those, Trust Center allows you to go and automatically take the recommended changes and put them into a branch in DevOps. So you remember when Jason took you through the process of building a branch in Flosum DevOps? It's our own native version control system. We're doing the same thing here, except we're just taking the security violations. And I can give it a branch description here. And what this is going to do is take the recommended changes that we put in our policies. It's going to build up a branch with those recommended changes, and it's going to put the appropriate metadata on that branch. In this case, I think it'll be two profile records and some security settings, but it's literally taken us right back into Flosum DevOps here. It's editor a read-only profile, and it's made the appropriate changes for those. And here's our Flosum security violations trust center piece as well, and you can go and do the same thing here. But we now have a new profile where it's changed. And so from here, you could put this branch through the very same process that you had before in DevOps, where you run the overwrite protection and other analysis tools against your target environments, and this thing gets pushed right into your pipeline for release. As it goes forward. And so the idea here is that we're able to detect all of your problematic changes coming through your DevOps pipeline for Salesforce. We give you tailored and customized rules for each environment that you have. It's going to flag problems in those. And then it's going to give you automatic remediation that just pulls right into our DevOps tools, into your regular processes, so that you can deploy them along with your functional changes and other pieces. Now, I know we just went through a lot. We just went through organization, connections, scans. We did templates and remediation there. We didn't give it a whole lot of time, but let me pause there. Gustavo, are we getting any questions in the chat? We have a few more things to go over here, but I want to make sure that we're answering people's questions and see if they're curious about things. Okay. All right. So, from here, we've kind of seen a whirlwind tour through Trust Center's security and remediation piece. We've gone through and we've actually set up remediation and other people there. There are some other ancillary capabilities that we have in Trust Center that will help you in your day-to-day items. So we'll talk about a couple of things in turn here. We'll do audit trails, and then we'll do metadata reports, and then we'll talk about data masking as well. With audit trails, it is literally something that will monitor the configuration changes that you've done in your Salesforce orgs and allow you to download artifacts and audit those orgs periodically, right? And so with my Edutech org, I can go and schedule periodic audits, maybe once a week. That'll take snapshots of the metadata and other changes that have been made. It will take a snapshot that includes all of your violations, high risk, low risk, and other pieces. But then it'll get down to some very nitty gritty pieces there too. So if I drill into this and I start looking through my audit trail items, you can see that it's going to filter them down to the different types over here. And so this list is giving me a list of all the components that have changed over time. But it's easy enough to go and filter this down to different categories, things like administrative changes. So we changed a read-only profile to make some changes there. We changed a password policy and other pieces. We can focus in on development work. So I'm sure many of you have written plenty of Apex classes, Apex triggers, Lightning components, both Aura and Lightning Web components. And so this is going to give you a list of all of the changes that have been made in these orgs and in this pipeline, um, you know, over time for those items as well. Documents and binary files that have been uploaded and added to those things, including content and other pieces, changes to email templates, and things like our favorite process builder and flow. And I write flows every day myself. And so this will give you a nice idea of what's making it into your DevOps pipeline from these flow changes. These items can be changed quite frequently too. So if you think about the development work that you're doing today, in Salesforce. A lot of it's going to be in a declarative tool like Flow, whereas 5 years ago it might have been more focused on Apex and Lightning and Visual Force, right? And then there's other pieces in here too, reports and dashboards. We can filter down to just the changes in reports and dashboards, basic setup and customization pieces as well. And then what will be important for this crowd as well is translation work that's done. Now, my org is only in English here, so I don't have anything listed for translations. But we know that in an active international Salesforce org, especially a big one, you're going to get a lot of translation work in there. And the idea here is that you're keeping track of all of the changes that are made. This certainly helps with things like SOX compliance in the US and other audit requirements in other jurisdictions. Now, closely related to that is the idea of metadata reports. So if I click over here on metadata reports as well, it's going to give you a really handy set of tools. Sometimes as a developer, I just need to see what's in an org. Other times I need to get an artifact that shows me the state of that org at a particular time. So if I concentrate on the Edutech org here, it will let me create a data dictionary based on snapshots it's been taking on particular dates. So over time, Flosum DevOps can take a snapshot of an org's metadata. This particular date, it had 130 custom objects with 1,239 custom fields. And if I wanted to take that and get a snapshot of that, it will let me download a zip file that I saved to my desktop. And when it comes up, it'll just be a few CSV files or spreadsheets that have exactly those items in them, right? And so you can take those, download them, you can put those in version control and decide where they go. You can share them with your auditors. You always have that artifact, right? And it's always going to be there. So if I open this data dictionary reports, you'll kind of see that. And I don't think I have Excel on here, but it should bring it right up in a spreadsheet here. So, how many times have you always wanted to generate a spreadsheet with all of your Salesforce fields in it for whatever reason? Well, that's really why we built this data dictionary piece. Um, CRUD is something similar. So I know many of you may have used the perm comparator tool on Heroku to go and compare profiles and permission sets. But sometimes you need to do this across different orgs or across different dates and in a little more detailed manner. So this tool will let you go and download that as as a set of spreadsheets as well. And when you open that, it will have very similar things to what we saw before, a spreadsheet for each different profile that then details exactly what's in that profile. What's the object CRUD on it? Is it read, edit, delete, and other things in there as well. So this section is all about doing artifacts and creating artifacts to go and download these items for both the data dictionary, the CRUD. We can do profiles and permission sets. We can actually compare profiles and permission sets across different orgs, generate a download, right? If we happen to have a snapshot of those things. And then we just have a basic org compare as well. And so if I wanted to compare, our EduTech org with one of its sandboxes, and we've been taking snapshots of those over time, and we wanted to decide we really care about only what's different or missing in source and missing in the target, that's what this tool will do. It will generate a file that then shows me what's different in between both of those. So if I unzip that, I can get in here and it will tell me org deltas between the two as well. So very handy for both auditing and debugging and just looking to see what's changed, right? You can see that on this date we had our community's landing controller Apex class that was missing in one org and not in the other because Experience Cloud is on in one org and not the other. So let me pause there and see if there are questions. Again, Gustavo, we just did audit trails, which keeps that official record of everything that's happened and management changes. And then we did metadata reports, which is a utility piece. From here, we can talk data masking, which is the last piece I have today. But I'm really curious what folks are thinking and if they want to explore other pieces or if they have questions. All right. Well, I'm sure folks will have questions, especially as we get to the end here, and we're happy to stick around and work through some of it. Let's talk data masking as well. Let's set things up a little bit. I know many of you are working with sandboxes. Many of you have full copy sandboxes that you're working with, and many of you have partial copy sandboxes that you're working with. The interesting thing about those types of sandboxes is that they take a copy of the data in your production org at Salesforce. And that's really handy from a test perspective. But Mauricio, I think you worked at some really interesting places. You're working in financial services now, and you've been in oil and gas. And I know that people have worked in industries where very sensitive data is being kept in their production Salesforce org. And while that makes a really good set of test cases, we don't always want that data proliferating. And when we copy a sandbox from production, it's proliferating. Imagine a production org with credit card numbers in it or social security numbers in it. That's really what data masking is about. And data masking in Trust Center, its whole job is to reach into a sandbox and anonymize data in place. So we've created a new sandbox. It's a full copy sandbox. It has everybody's information from production in there. And there are certain fields on certain objects that we want to scramble and anonymize because of that. And so the way that these work is that you create a data masking template for specific objects and fields and rules around those fields. You configure that to go into one of these sandboxes and you run these templates. And those templates will go into that sandbox and anonymize that data. And so we can create templates all we want here and create new templates and other pieces here. And when we create a template, it's a matter of giving it a name, giving it a description, choosing an org. So I'll choose Jason's sandbox here, and then determining which objects you want to anonymize. So I'll put a couple of in here just to be clear, account, and let's go get contact because I think those are two of the very common ones that we do. The next, we want to go tell it what we want to do with each of those. So you can see on the left side here, it's put account and contact. Go ahead.
Joe, we have one question here. Uh, But it's not related to data masking, so I'll wait for you to finish data, and then we go back to this question. It's about profile
Okay.
and permission set.
Yeah, we'll go back to that. Thank you. I love profiles and permission sets too. So let's finish this data mask template. So for accounts, we want to decide which records we're going to reach in and change. We could put all accounts, but that might be a large number, right? And so what we might do is only choose to yeah, scramble partner accounts or a subset of other ones. Then from here, what we would do is designate a set of fields that we want to go and change. So my sensitive fields on account might be the fax number, phone number, uh, they might be annual revenue, and a few other pieces. And within that, we can decide exactly how we treat each of these fields. So Trust Center is going to reach in and maybe randomize the fax and randomize the phone number. Something for the account number, I might do randomization or replace it from a library. And then annual revenue, I think we probably want to replace it from a library that we define here. Maybe create a specific set of values. If we had some time to configure those, I would. But I'll put this random in here, and maybe we'll put a minimum and maximum. So 1 million and 30 million. And then these become very important too. When you're working with Salesforce data, you probably want to disable a lot of the automations that happen when you insert and update records. And so all of us have built triggers and flows, process builders, and workflow rules and validation rules in Salesforce. And if we're going to go change the data in an org en masse, we want to be able to disable those automations, just like Jason showed you, I think, with our data migrator and our backup and recovery product. And so here we've configured pretty much everything we want to change about accounts and contacts, or about accounts. We probably want to do the same thing with contacts as well. And so I'll just leave this for all contacts. But with contacts, we probably want to mask a few fields. So fax, I know that email address is going to be an important one. And we'll grab a couple of other fields here. So I think contact description, and then I think if we could find a type or some other field here, we could do it. Really, any field on those object records is going to be okay, and that could include first name and last name. Now, the important part here is that even when we randomize characters, it's going to preserve the formatting, right? And so for an email, I might want to add invalid and not necessarily have the full email, or I might want to randomize it too. So very handy options there. And then for descriptions, we'll probably do random, and then we might I'll go and just delete the last name if it's if it's something there. We'll similarly disable our triggers here, and then when it comes time, let me hide some things here. You come to a review of the template that'll tell you exactly which account or which objects and fields that we're doing and what we're doing with them, right? And then from here, I'll save the template. And when I want to run it, I can go and run this against this job immediately or on a schedule. And so if I wanted this to run on a schedule against the Edutech org, I would go and set it up to, for this job to run on one date here, click into schedule, and then it will go and run that on the date itself. I won't run it here because I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time doing that. But the idea here is that you have total control over this. When you do a sandbox refresh or a sandbox spin up, you can go and apply the same template to it and make it work from there. And then over time, these jobs are going to run. And we do keep a control panel for these jobs to run, and we'll give you all the info about what it's been doing. It'll keep a good set of logs up here. It will tell you exactly what it's going after and the objects that it's working with. And if it fails, it will give you the logs of the failure and other pieces there. So this one is kind of struggling to get a job details there, but that's data masking in a nutshell. Now, Gustavo, you mentioned there is a question about profiles. So does it make sense for me to read it, or is it in Portuguese?
It's in English, so.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So David, I think maybe I'm saying your name right. You wanted to know, what does the profile and permission set comparison look like? Can we look at the extracted file? Let's go and do that. I think what we'll do is we'll get back in here. We'll do that. I assume you were talking about the audit trail and org comparison piece, or the metadata reports piece, right? And so when we look at profile and permission set comparison, let's go into the Edutech org. And then let's look at, we've got same org a little bit later, because I think we have multiple snapshots. And I don't know if we've changed any data in here, but if I look at the two different snapshots there, you can see one profile versus 17, one profile versus 2, or one permission set versus 2. So maybe if I change to another snapshot, I might get different statistics here. But when we download it, it's going to give me that list. And if I go and look at this, let's go see what this looks like. It will get a zip file. And then it will give me kind of a list of each of these profiles that existed across these two orgs, right? And the names are going to contain all of the information of where it was, right? And whether it lived there or not. But if I pop this open, it's going to show you just exactly the differences, because I had it set up to only monitor the differences, right? And so we see that a new custom object type field was set to true, and now it's actually missing from one of the orgs in this case, and it's not in that same profile over time. So if I continue with this, you could probably find a couple that have a lot of profiles in there and a lot of changes in the profiles. But the trick is just getting those two snapshots from either the same org or from two different orgs. So it's a little more batch based than your traditional perm comparator tool is, the one that Salesforce gives you for free, and that only handles really one org. This one is meant to handle multiple orgs across snapshots across multiple dates, and then it puts it all in this zip file with some of this information in it, so you can go and run those comparison, right? So chatter external user is the one that's in here, and we could pull that up, but this one is going to be missing from that target org too, because I don't think it's actually, I think it didn't exist before that date as we looked at. But that's, hopefully that answered your question, and it gives you that the nice set of files that you have, and it'll do a comparison on each one of those across the different orgs. For the most part, I have it missing in that org because I don't have a lot of changes in place, but you can kind of see that they may have activated CMS for some things in this profile and others, but it tries to give you that spreadsheet comparison for an individual org across different snapshots.
Davi, ficou claro? Não sei se o Davi ainda está aí.
David says, okay. Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, and I think, when you look at those metadata reports, they're just handy because they generate artifacts, and many times people need to put those into reporting systems. We'll monitor it in real time and then help you generate those artifacts, both from an audit perspective and just from a records perspective too.
Great. Mais alguma pergunta, pessoal? Bom, pessoal, se não tiver, essa foi a nossa apresentação de Flosum Trust Center, e a gente já encerra aqui a nossa sessão, aqui, a nossa série com o Maurício. Eu tenho aqui ainda não, já eu tenho os nomes, esperando o pessoal mandar aqui. De pessoal, se vocês tiverem algum interesse em conhecer mais, tá, de alguma das soluções, vocês tem o meu LinkedIn, tem o LinkedIn do Joe, tem o site, flosum.com, e meu e-mail, geoshow@flosum.com, certo? A gente discute, até entra mais detalhe, alguma questão, tá? Quer ver se é um fit para o processo de vocês ou não é, vocês me avisam que a gente pode dar um deep dive aí no processo específico de vocês, certo?
Show de bola. Pessoal, se tem uma pergunta, fiquem tranquilos, pode fazer tanto em português aqui que a gente traduz aqui para o Joe.
Bom, pessoal, eu já tenho acho que já tenho os nomes aqui, só um minuto.
Boa.
Bolivar Teixeira e Renato de Oliveira.
Opa! O nosso mestre do MuleSoft, que é o Renato de Oliveira, ele é líder da comunidade de MuleSoft, sempre está nos eventos aqui com a gente, legal. E o Bolivar também é assíduo. Obrigado aí pela participação dos dois.
Legal, legal, pessoal. Vou entrar em contato com vocês amanhã e aí dou os detalhes aí. Mas, pessoal, era isso. Agradecer a todos aqui. Maurício, muito obrigado aí pelo espaço. Pessoal, também obrigado aí vindo sexta-feira, quarta-feira, 6 horas da tarde. Eu sei que a corrida aí, o dia todo de trabalho aí é cansativo. Mas ficamos à disposição e muito obrigado, pessoal.
Beleza, a gente que agradece aí, Gustavo, aparecer mais alguma coisa aí que vocês gostariam de apresentar para o pessoal, a gente está à disposição de vocês de novo, né? Até que enfim a gente conseguiu fazer os eventos, então foi sensacional e as portas estão abertas para vocês. Joe, thank you very much, my friend. I really want to meet you in the Dreamforce. I'm gonna search for you there. I'm gonna arrive Monday and probably this Tuesday. I still have some schedules to go for because as a Salesforce MVP we have some stuff to do, and but I will look for meeting with you there. It'll be a pleasure, and thank you very much for the lessons. All the information that you provide was really great for us. It was a great learning experience.
Thank you as well. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to all of you. Hopefully I'll meet some of you at Dreamforce as well.
Cool. Pessoal, muitíssimo obrigado. Deixa eu parar de gravar aqui agora.